As Jonathan said, we met 20 years ago, 20 years next year. I had just come to work for, where is it, Luke, who with Vincent has, I think, written probably the best short chapter on competition economics there is. And Luke introduced me to Jonathan, and I was in awe of the man. I mean, I had just come from university, I was a trainee, I had read his very extensive then papers, and I was really awestruck. And I continue to be awestruck. The one thing you all know about him, you know, he has done all the big jobs, or many of the big jobs in in the European Commission. After 9/11, he was at Justice and Home Affairs. After Lehman's, he was at DG Markt and Financial Services. The one thing that perhaps those who don't know him as well as I do is the humility of the man. It was a crazy thing. 25-year-old kid goes up to the Director of Policy at the European Commission, a guy whose papers he's been reading, and he says, I've got a bunch of people, many of them, most of them at the start of their careers. What do you think? I'm not sure very many people would have even given me a hearing. Not only did he give me a hearing, but he said, yeah, let's do it. Let's see what happens. And the reason he did it, I think there were two reasons. One, I think he wanted to help people out. He knew the people, the authors, most of whom were at the early stage of their careers. He wanted to give a helping hand. And when I look around the room here, a number of you are here, and when I look down the old list, the extraordinary accomplishments of those people who participated in the first edition is really remarkable. Directors, heads of unit, some of the most influential people in competition. We even have a Director-General, Swedish Director-General. Really quite an extraordinary thing. But it was also a deep commitment, I think, to transparency at a time when transparency was not fashionable. And I think that has really come through. So first of all, I want to say a big, huge thank you to you for all of that. And if you will allow me a few minutes, I know this speaking at length can be dull, but there are a few thank yous that I do want to say. So if you will allow me just a few minutes to do that. First of all, to my co-authors. It has been an extraordinary privilege to work with you over the last 3 years. Each of you is a leading thinker on your subject, and you have each produced wonderful, wonderful texts. Just, don't take my word. Just give you an example. I had lunch with Ewan Sackers. Where is he? See that? Who, I don't know if I'm revealing something that I shouldn't be, but along with Gingrich and Antoine, has written what I think is really the leading text on cartel law. It's a wonderful, wonderful piece, and if you have a question, you go there and you find the answer. He told me that in preparation for his new job, is it public, your new job? Okay. He told me, he doesn't tell me very many secrets, but he's telling me about his job. Anyway, he told me that in preparation for his new job, as head of unit in state aid, he had taken the state aid chapter. The state aid chapter that Claire, Henri, Tim and Kuhn wrote. And there is no greater compliment. That's the text he took to prepare for his new job as head of unit. External practitioners think this as well. To ensure the book addressed really that audience, some of the more specialist chapters were also read by some leading private practitioners on a blind basis. They didn't know who the authors were, they didn't know who the reviewers were. And the reviewers described the pharma chapter, Harold, Elena, Dominic, the energy chapter by Lars and Celine, who I think is, I'm not sure Lars is here, but Celine is here. Transport, Hubert, Marta, Anatoly, Media, Christophe, and Anthony. Modernization, Eddie unfortunately couldn't be here. Ailsa, 106, Jose Luis Buendia. They described independently of one another that these chapters were the very best they had read on the subject. It's really an extraordinary achievement. And I also wanted to say a very personal thank you to 3 individuals, Kevin, Donica and Luke. They were there when the book was born. He's now a teenager. And they held my hand through the first and second editions and produced, and I really don't think the first and second editions would have happened without the 3 of you. And the third edition, you've produced outstanding chapters in your own right. Luke with Andre, a brilliant chapter on verticals. Kevin with Lars, and again Luke, whose name's going to come up again and again and again, on IP. Donica with Enrique Gonzalez-Diaz, Matthew Bennett, Henning and Anna on horizontals. I also want to talk about Eduardo, David and Pierre, who took on responsibility for the telecoms chapter after I decided at a very, very, very late stage to break the chapter up and to create a separate chapter on telecoms and a separate chapter on media. And I want to say to you, I don't know where you are, I think you are here, I don't know how you managed in the time to write such a wonderful piece. So thank you to you. Steve Ryan, who I think was also involved from the first chapter, for the first edition, who is now actually not a UG comp, but agreed to carry on working. With Rita and Nick, took on the extraordinary responsibility for writing a chapter on financial services at a time of unprecedented flux. And they've written a chapter which I know is going to be used next year at Oxford University as part of the teaching course. Finally, 2 chapters which, along with cartels, make up over 1/3 of the book, mergers and 102. Now there are many wonderful texts on mergers. Nick Levy, who I think is here, has written really a super book. But Joseph, Kleiss and Max produced a chapter that I think will be the very first place and often the last place the practitioners will look to for answers. I have been trying over the last few months to find a question to which they do not provide an answer in the book, and I have failed miserably. 102, Miguel, Renato Mazzini, and Hans Zengler produced an extraordinary analytical chapter, but one that was deeply, deeply practical as well. To you all, I want to say thank you. And I have to wrap up, right? And I know I've been talking way too long. 2 final thanks. One to Dan Swanson and Pete Alexiades, my partners at Gibson Dunn, who supported me through this process. It's not an easy thing to do, but they really backed me throughout the whole process, and I want to say thank you to them. And finally, to 2 people who contributed enormously, and I'm glad, I'm going to speak to the camera now, 2 people who contributed enormously to the book, Sarah Northern and Tony Penny. A number of you will know Tony from the previous edition. They played a huge role, and I forgot to thank them in the book. So, Sarah, Tony, in front of everybody and to the camera, thank you so much. Thank you all for coming tonight.